Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the number one thing that gets in the way of consulting success. Welcome to your Consulting Business Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson, and this is episode number 45. Today on the podcast, we have an amazing guest who is going to be talking about the thing that gets in the way of just about all consulting success, and it's the thing that undermines our confidence, and confidence is key when we're going to be working as an advisor or a consultant. So if you are a consultant, you are in the right place. If you're an emerging person who is thinking of moving into consulting or advisory, that could be from a corporate space. You might be going to start your own business, actually start out on your own, start your own practice, or you could actually be in the service area. Let's say you're running a service business for some time and you've suddenly realized, actually, my advice is really, really valuable and I've got a lot of history and expertise that comes with it. It may actually be the case that your advice is even more valuable than the service that you are providing. Well, if you are one of those people, you are in the right place. In Your Consulting Business Podcast, we talk about all things that can help you in running your consulting business. And the guest that I have on today is going to certainly help us both do that because she's amazing. And I have said as a she, but I'm not going to give her out the rest. So our next guest is an executive coach who has worked with C-suite executives at prominent startups, which are no longer really startups, but she helped through the process at Venmo, at Etsy, at DraftKings, the Wirecutter, Mack Weldon, yeah, absolutely, and Tory Burch. There are so many places where she has contributed, and she also does the same in the larger consulting space at Fortune 500s, including Dell, IBM, Microsoft, Google, Pfizer, Klein and Hitachi. She was named the top startup coach in the world by the Thinkers 50 and a regular contributor to the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Inc. Today she's here to talk about imposter syndrome, amongst other things. Please make her feel absolutely welcome, Alisa Cohn. Alisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Russell. I'm so excited to be here. This
is great, and it's been it hasn't been a long time coming. We literally were able to engage this week and get on the show straight away. So I really appreciate you making the time.
I appreciate you being flexible too, and as you said, it's the opposite of a long time coming.
Yeah, that does it. Yeah. So your background. You have a long history in the leadership space and helping executives and businesses do what they need to do to take the next steps. Can you give me a little background or give the audience a little background about how you've come to be where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, I've been a coach for 22 years, but before that, I kind of did a bunch of different things. I was the chief of staff to the provost. I was in management consulting. I was a CPA. I was a CFO of a startup. So I had a lot of things happening, but really for me, the moment of truth was when I was way back in the day, quite young. I was the chief of staff to the provost at a university. And he said, oh, you can't manage faculty because they have tenure. And even then I was super young, but I thought it can't be people only do what you want them to do because otherwise you'll fire them. Yeah. So I went off to business school, to Cornell, to really explore why do people do things in service of the organization, or sadly they don't. And so, I had a bit of certainly a journey, but like I went from there and I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers for a couple of years doing management consulting, and I got my CPA, and then I joined the startup world, and wow. I was in the startup world for 2 years, and I was a CFO of one startup and the head of strategy of another startup. And that all imploded back in the day, just after 2000. And the company I was with said, come out here to California. I was in Boston at the time. Come out here to California and we have a job for you here. And I said, no, I'm going to become a coach now. That was a Friday. And on Monday, I became a coach. And it's been kind of one foot in front of the other for 22 years.
Could I just quickly ask you, what was it that made you decide to become a coach?
Well, I wanted to make a difference. I really had a moment of truth in all these different experiences. I had this moment of truth, which was, I don't belong in these large companies, which is why I went to the startup world. I need to make a difference. And the music in my head was to make a difference, that the work of my hands mattered. And I then met a coach soon after, and I was like, that is what I want to do. It was like violins played when I heard her speak. And I thought, that is just like me. I can do that.
Officially met the mentor.
Yeah. for sure. And she was a mentor to me. I was at a conference and I followed her around the conference, and, she was nice to me. She would take coach training and do this and do that. And so that's, when people give you advice, you got two choices, right? You kind of make up all your excuses for not doing it, or you just do it. And so I'm definitely the kind of person that can find the right mentors. We met through Marshall Goldsmith, a very amazing mentor of mine. I've been a friend and mentor for 17 years. And, I feel like one of my skills in life is to be able to hear wisdom, hear amazing advice, and then take it myself.
I love that. So important to have mentors in your life. And I can, there's at least 5 or 6 that are like key in my progression to get me where I am today. But where are you today? So what is the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis now?
Yeah. So I work with clients. Of course, I work a lot with startups. So I've worked with Venmo, with Etsy. I work now with DraftKings and companies like that. And also other companies, which you've never heard of, but I promise you will. And, they're sort of in various stages of starting up. So I work with my CEOs and C-suite, or I say founder CEOs, and also members of the executive team inside of startups, some large companies, so large public companies or large private companies. I also do workshops and team offsites and, those kinds of sessions, like executive sessions and team offsites. And I've also, as I've written a book. It's called From Startup to Grown Up, and I'm always out speaking my book. And I also have my own podcast, also called From Startup to Grown Up, where I interview founders and other builders to talk about their own personal growth journeys that got them from startup to grown up.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So if you listen to this and you want a bit more of that, definitely go and check out that podcast after you finish this episode. So we were talking before the session about consultants, people moving from either a corporate space into their own consultancy, or sometimes it's actually the service provider who's now deciding that or realizing that their advice is valuable. There are things that get in the way of their growth. There are things that get in the way of them taking steps. One of those in particular was the imposter syndrome. Tell me your perspective on this.
Yeah. To me, this is really big, and it's a big topic that has a lot of resonance. So first of all, to define imposter syndrome for people who haven't really understand it, it's the feeling that you've accomplished everything in your life because of luck, and your luck is about to run out. It's the experience of being a fraud or being found out as a fraud. And when I talk about that, you can relate to that, right?
Well, not only can I relate to that, colleagues of mine who've been in business long enough say you can tell a person who's been in business. It's like looking at someone who's left jail. There's a certain way that they walk. There's a certain way that they hold their shoulders because they're expecting the other shoe to drop at any point.
That's right. That's right. That's a part of it. Yeah. It's so funny that you say that. There's a physicality to it. But when I talk about imposter syndrome in any kind of environment, right, people really resonate with this. Now, why would that be? Well, I talk to a lot of high achievers, and it turns out that 95% of high achievers have at some point experienced severe self-doubt and imposter syndrome in their lives. And that includes Serena Williams, the great tennis star. Yep. That includes Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks. That includes Michael Jordan, right? The phenom and the legend in basketball, and Lady Gaga. So many and many, many more. And, anyone listening to this who's trying to build themselves and learn is probably a high achiever. So whoever you are, there's a good chance that you have experienced imposter syndrome. And the reason it gets in the way and it's so debilitating is because it makes you do the thing that I think is the enemy. It makes you doubt. You doubt yourself. You're uncomfortable. You're busy churning in your head. Am I good enough? Can I do it? And then in the little moments of decision-making, you, the new consultant, or not even so new consultant, may not make that call because it's not going to work. He's not going to want to talk to me. Or you may not take that risk because you're so busy being engulfed by the demons in your head. So it's super important to identify your own imposter syndrome and then to eradicate it.
It's I like analogies, as you know. I like analogies with the blacksmithing stuff. You've got some great weightlifting things too. But I think of parkour when I think of this sort of scenario where you've got these people who have, if you don't know what parkour is, it's these individuals who are jumping between dangerous areas. They're jumping from one thing to another. They're doing very high risk gymnastics, let's put it that way. And these guys look like they're so natural and in flow because they have confidence, because they are within the moment, they are in flow. But the second that they step out of flow, or they have some self-doubt, you see how it goes wrong. And you
Totally.
crash.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And you crash when you kind of let in, by the way, healthy doubt and healthy maybe recognizing that humility, let's say, and you have something to learn. That is wonderful because it keeps you moving in the direction of feedback and learning and getting better and working on your craft. That's really important. And that can only really grow. You can only help you grow if it's on the baseline of the word that you just used, which is confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence that I know what I'm doing, that I can figure it out, that I have value to add and a perspective to add. And the only reason you're going to be able to speak up when you need to, when it's difficult, or again, send the extra, in the extra email to someone who hasn't gotten back to you, is when you're on the bedrock of confidence. So it's really on everybody. Everyone who's got a successful life is a direct proportion to how much you're able to build up that bedrock of self-confidence, so that you can afford to risk yourself, maybe get shot down, but you will still be okay. And that will help you continue to aspire and to grow.
Now, the topic of resilience is a big one right now. What's the difference between that style of confidence, or that bedrock of confidence, and resilience? Are they the same thing? Are they different?
Well, resilience is the process of bouncing back when you have come across a setback or an obstacle. So what that means is, when you get rejected, when the thing you wanted to happen didn't work out, when something goes wrong for you, your bedrock of confidence is what's going to allow you to bounce back in, let's say, a week and not a year, or let's say a day and not a week, or let's say an hour and not a day. And what that does is it frees you up to do new things, to try again. So resilience is just the experience of being able to bounce back. And you can absolutely develop your resilience, first of all, by intending to do so. And second of all, by having a set of strategies around you. And as you increase your resilience, of course, when things do work out, they don't work out, they don't work, if they do work out, of course, that continues to strengthen your bedrock of self-confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine, Louise Marler, talks a lot about confidence, and in particular, where either managers or leaders or what have you are saying to their people, be more confident. You got to be more confident, right? And it's a bugbear for her, because you can't just tell someone to be more confident. You can't just be more confident. There's a process of becoming. What is that process for people? What is the process people can go through to build up some of that bedrock?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, because it's so true. It's not like, oh, just be more confident. Oh, well, if I could do that, I would have done that already. Okay. Confidence comes from attempting hard things and being able to achieve them. So step one with confidence is make a list of a bunch of your past achievements, things that you've accomplished which are hard, especially when you overcame challenges. Yep. This does two things. It's going to increase your bedrock of self-confidence, and it's actually going to be one of the key tools in overcoming your severe self-doubt or imposter syndrome. And the reason it's going to help you do that is because what I call it is it's a highlight reel. So a highlight reel is like your best of moments. And when you go back in your memory banks and think about times that you didn't think you'd be able to do something and you're able to do it, times that you took a risk and you were scared and it paid off, times that, for example, you stood in front of a group of people and did public speaking, even though you were afraid to do it. Times when you
that example in particular is a big one. The first time I ever spoke in front of a decent sized audience, it's 200 people. People have listened to this podcast, probably heard this before, but I got a case of what I call the Charlie Browns, which is, if you've ever seen the Charlie Brown cartoon, the teacher at the front of the room speaks like wah 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 wah, and I started hearing my own voice sound like that in my ears, and I'm like, I think I'm about to faint. I put a video on while I was in the middle of my presentation. I got through it and got off the stage, and no one had noticed.
Yeah.
And when I got back to my offices, I think it was 20 people had actually called our business to see if they could work with us. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Now I need to keep doing this hard thing. And exactly. It became the start of a big journey that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that could be part of your highlight reel, to realize that you were almost going to faint and you didn't, and then you were successful. And that is going to help give you more confidence, but also it's going to overcome your imposter syndrome when it naturally comes up when you're about to go, for example, do public speaking again. Another situation happened with one of my clients. He's a venture capitalist, and venture capital is a very lonely profession. And so he would sort of toil away in obscurity, afraid he was going to get called to the principal's office. That's what his voice sounded like, the principal's office, and be told like, you're out. And so I asked him to think about, like, no kidding, like actual accomplishments he had in the past, like 3 to 5 years. Like, why did it even make him a partner? Maybe because he went out and got a deal that nobody else could get. Maybe because he was the one everybody called when you had to talk the founder off the ledge. Maybe because, he would, go into the investment meetings and advocate for his own investments, and always come out with a triumphant answer. And so I asked him to like physically write those down to remember them. Now, of course, just to say, he rolled his eyes like, oh, you got to be kidding me, the touchy-feely stuff. I'm like, just try it. So to humor me, he tried it. And 2 weeks later, he came back to me and he was beaming because he'd written down his successes. He had this highlight reel. He read them to himself every day. And that encouraged him, because it gave him a little dopamine hit, encouraged him to do the first hard thing of the day every day. After he read this, he did the hard thing. Often it would work out, and that would just add to his bedrock of confidence.
That's cool. So we write the list down, and I have done similar things with some of my clients where they go, well, I've got nothing to write down, and they'll just humor me, just go through the process, and suddenly there's 20, 30 things on a sheet, right? So you write these things down. You had that person read them every day. I would imagine having them in a place that it's not just in a drawer, somewhere visible, somewhere.
Yes.
Now, the step from there, okay, so that's awareness. It's belief that I have done things. Moving into the I can do future things, and the point that you said about doing hard things. How hard's too hard? Should we be tempering our confidence moving forward? Like, what's the thought process of like, I've got a sheet, so I can do anything, or is there some realistic practicality we need to bring into this?
Yeah, that's a great question, because really you have this sort of the landscape and the contours of your own comfort zone. So everybody can think right now, what are the things you're most comfortable doing, and then less comfortable and less comfortable. And at some point, there's something that professionally, like in your business, that you like really don't want to do. It might be do a cold call. It might be reach out to your network of people who you haven't talked to in a while. It might be public speaking. That's very common for people. It might be write a book. And that's outside the contours of your comfort zone. Great. Good to know. So what that means is you want to do the things which are just under, right? Just in the sort of in the strike zone of your comfort zone, and do things which kind of get you there. So for example, public speaking, which is a really good example, you might not feel comfortable doing your own speech in front of 100, 200, 300 people. But what could you do? I bet you could do a 12-person discussion. I bet you could be on a panel. I bet you could moderate a panel. Those kinds of things make you a little uncomfortable, but won't make you actually throw up, right? And so if you can do those things, you add them to the win column, and you consciously and slowly, as slow as you need to, expand your comfort zone. And the power of that, even though you're uncomfortable all the time because you're like, I'm so uncomfortable, but nonetheless, you're expanding the repertoire of your skills, the repertoire of what's possible for you as you inch forward outside of your comfort zone.
I'm imagining or visualizing these circles that are within each other and slowly building out, and plotting the things that are within my comfort zone or slightly out of my comfort zone or way out of my comfort zone, and actually starting to put some priority on them, like which one first, which one second. I think that's fantastic.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. And when you say priority, it's also thinking about what is going to get you a return for your business or for your personal life, whatever, however you're doing this, right? But let's assume it's in the business context. You might be super uncomfortable, I don't know, totally making this up, going downtown to your downtown area and knocking on doors of people one by one to sort of introduce yourself. That might be really uncomfortable for you. For me too. Okay. So do I actually think that's going to be a very useful, profitable activity for whatever business you are? Probably not, actually. Might be like super weird.
Or you're going to knock on.
Yeah, exactly. Like super, that was like something they did in the 70s. Like, that's great. You should totally go do that in the 70s because that matters, especially in New York where I live.
Yeah.
But, you could be super uncomfortable doing that and then go do it, but ultimately it doesn't really accrue value to you in your business. So another way to plot the activities you need to do is, what are kind of the 10 things that would actually accrue value to your business, would help you build a business? And then think about what is maybe a hard one to do, which would have high impact. And that's a good one for you to work on for a period of months.
Yeah, it's fantastic. In fact, there is something that I think is relevant to most people in the consulting space right now, that is often uncomfortable, which is close to the knocking on doors. It's the introducing yourself to somebody you don't know, right?
Yes.
Most consultants are wanting an introduction to somebody, but could you introduce yourself? And one of the best introductions I always suggest is the mayor of the town. The mayor of the town is that person who is the head or the leader of an area. That could be the head of an association, the chairperson of an organization. You can actually introduce yourself to these people and even say something as simple as, "I'd love to know how I can get involved." They're really open to your call.
Yes, I love that. And when you offer to help or add value, your call is much more welcome than, "Hi, if you have any ideas for how I can build my business, please tell me." No,
No.
right? Offer value. Offering value is always a good idea. And so to your point, the mayor of the town is a great metaphor. And also, if it's the head of an association, believe me, they could use an extra pair of hands and a good brain.
Always.
Believe me, they would happily accept your offer to organize the conference for them.
Oh,
And then you're in the swim. Then you're in the thick of things.
That's it. So you're doing these increasingly hard things, but they don't seem increasingly harder because they're now within your comfort zone and they're just one step out, one step removed.
They're just one step out. Right. And by the way, they don't seem increasingly harder, but just like in strength training, and I'll give you the analogy here. When I lift, I get stronger. Just to also fill everybody in, I'm an obsessive strength trainer. I've been strength training and weightlifting for about 10 years, and I love it. And it's taught me a lot about so many things. But one thing to say is that when I, let's say, squat a very heavy weight, that's hard. And then I get stronger and that weight becomes easier. Now, what do I do? Increase the weight. So it never gets easy, right? It's just you're building more muscle and more capability. And for everybody, I would just say, when you take steps out of your comfort zone, you always have to keep the new activity a little bit out of your comfort zone. And so it is always challenging. And you've got to figure out how you're going to handle and manage your own emotions around it's challenging. And it never gets easier if you keep doing it.
I'm going to take your analogy and run one step further. Let's say that all right, I'm going for my PB, my personal best. I'm going to add an extra 5 pounds. Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. And you've tried, but you've been unsuccessful. Suddenly the confidence is going down, but you've still got your bedrock. All right, well, let's put on 1 pound. Can we put on 1 pound? You can step back from that place that you couldn't quite get the win, but actually step back to a place that's a single step forward, but maybe not the 5, and get that confidence back. And I think it's key to have that confidence back. Yeah.
Totally agree. And by the way, sometimes you have a setback, i.e. a failure. In weight training, we call it a failure. And so you fail the rep. And then you know what you can sometimes do? Walk away and come back tomorrow when you're fresh. One failure does not mean I failed. One failure means you have the invitation and the opportunity to come back tomorrow and try again.
I love that. Love it so much. Now, where can people get more of you? Obviously, you've mentioned the podcast. We will highlight that in the show notes. Where can people get your book?
Oh, well, thank you so much. My book, From Startup to Grown Up, is available certainly on the online bookstores like Amazon and some, I'm not sure who's listening where, but in some stores as well, or come to my website, alisacohn.com/startup, and you can find out all about my book there. You can also go to my website, alisacohn.com/scripts, and you can download 5 scripts to help you have delicate conversations, difficult conversations, and 1 to make your life better.
Ooh, I love the way you've said that. I'm a marketer at heart, and I have to appreciate that move was very well done. So, Alisa, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. So, thank you so much for making the time. It's been fantastic to speak to you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
What a fantastic discussion. Alisa has a wealth of information. And what I love in these interviews is speaking to someone who actually has a depth of knowledge in the work that they're doing. They've been doing it so long that not only do they understand how to get the results on a consistent basis, but they're able to explain it really clearly for each and every one of us. If you're liking these episodes with the guests, please let me know in the comments. I'd also love you to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, go and click on the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified when we actually have a new episode live, which we do every single week. And also, if you're listening to it via the podcast, go and subscribe there as well. We love people putting reviews into the podcast and comments on the YouTube channel. So we'd love to hear from you. It only takes a moment to go in and add a little note that you can share with us and let us know how we're going. We would love your input. Now, it's a part of that show where I actually share something that you might find useful in your consulting business. Now, we've just talked about startup. We've talked about startups going from literally the startup phase right through to becoming, ideally, these big businesses. How do you become a CEO of your own business? That's certainly one part of it. Now, there's an interesting book written by an entrepreneur here in Australia. His name is Daniel Flynn, and the book is called Chapter 1. Now, this book came out several years ago, but it was amazing because it tells the story of Thank You, which is it's not not-for-profit, I think it's a social enterprise that was a startup very much, and it walked through the process of how they got to their first $500,000 in profit and how they were leading on from there. So he outlined it all in this book, and I think it's a fantastic read. What was interesting about Chapter 1 is when he released it, you could actually purchase it for any amount of money. So I purchased a few copies. Some copies I purchased for $50 so that I could actually give back. Other copies I purchased for 20 cents just to see if it was real, and it was 100% real. I could buy this for 20 cents. So I'm not sure if that's still the case with Chapter 1, but it's definitely worth getting. I'm going to have a link in the show notes for you to pick up a copy of that, written by Daniel Flynn. It's a fantastic read, and what's also interesting about it too is the way that it's written. It's written down the page like this or across the page, so definitely worth picking up even just from a point of interest. Now, if you are a consultant, then you're in the right place. You're in the right place. It'd be interesting to know what stage of your consulting journey you're at. I would love to know, are you thinking of starting? Have you just started? Have you been running for some time? Are you now at a point where you're wanting to turn it from the consultancy, which is just a practice, just you in the business, maybe you've got an assistant, to a point where you have other consultants working with you and actually start to create more of a business structure around it? I'd love to hear where you are on your journey. It's always good to know who's listening and get the feedback so I can make sure that we tailor the content in a direction that's going to serve you best. If you're interested to know more about me, you can find me at russellpearson.com, or you can go to russellpearsonprograms.com and you'll find some really cool resources there that you can download absolutely free. So go to russellpearsonprograms.com, download those, and hopefully they will be very, very useful for you in your consulting business. My name is Russell Pearson. It's a pleasure to speak to you. Stay passionate, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.